Good morning to our lecturers and peers. Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the Whadjuk Noongar people, traditional custodians of the land on which Curtin University's Bentley campus sits, and pay our respects to the elders, both past and present. Our visual presentation is on the urban theorist Lewis Mumford, who bore ideologies and theories that have relevance in our current modern-day society. He seems somewhat of a prophet. First, let us share with you his background and upbringing, then his place in history, after which we shall discuss his prominent theories that have dominated his works, such as Mega Machine, Biotechnic Society, Urban Civilization, Social Nucleus, Feeding the Machine City, and Polynucleated Cities. Some of these topics interweave and are inextricably linked. Lewis Mumford's theories are relevant to our future cities and their growth, our culture, and how we interact and stimulate our senses within those cities. Lewis Mumford was born October 19 in 1895 in Flushing and died January 26, 1990, Armenia, New York. He was born the illegitimate son of Albina Mumford and never knew his father, Lewis Mack. He would often refer to himself as a child of the city. He lived on West 65th Street with his mother. He considered the area to be a hodgepodge of architecture, ships, museum, dance halls, vaudeville theatres, trolleys, trains and ferries. A city built on a human scale, and this formed the base to his judgment of all cities. He was greatly inspired by Geddes, and from him he learned to make direct observations of cities and to look at cities like living organisms. He was considered to be the last great intellectual, writing for academia without education. He never finished his university degree, falling ill to tuberculosis. He served in the Navy as a radio technician in World War I. In many of his literary works, Mumford provides insight on city planning, the history of cities and technology, social philosophy, American literature and culture. He became the associate editor of The Dial in 1919, which helped to start his literary career, and from there he wrote architectural criticism and urban commentary for the New Yorker magazine from 1931 to 1963, and released a steady stream of novels from that point on, which include Sticks and Stones, The Golden Day, The Brown Decades, Technics and Civilization, The Culture of Cities, The Condition of Man, and The Conduct of Life. He was awarded a Knight of Order above the British Empire in 1943 and a US Medal of Freedom in 1964. His works are very inspirational still today, and his theories and principles are relevant to our current society. Mumford's theory of social order and hierarchy with humans as servo units, cogs in the mega machine, is based on Garnier's designed City Industrielle, where the grid brings structure and control of the masses by zoned areas such as commerce, industry and hospitals. Civilians mindlessly follow the structure and routine set by the higher status government. Every element in the city is controlled, the mega machine. It is this control that divides society into classes. The city centre is the point of maximum concentration for the power and culture of a city. Melbourne is based on a grid, then zoned areas such as the sport precinct, arts area and commercial. Melbourne city growth has been somewhat limited to the rigid grid system, though it has expanded in the docks and inner suburbs such as South Melbourne, Port Melbourne, South Yarra, Richmond and Carlton, of which all have expanded upward, extending cottages into high-rises. These affluent suburbs could be considered their own nodal centres. The lower social classes are pushed out of the city grid as the prices of development and yielding profits cares for no one but the wealthy. Only the homeless are left begging on the street. The mega machine ploughs through, not stopping for anyone less than the bourgeois. Mumford's early works talks of the importance of community and equality, yet in his later works he warns of this mega machine, a community manipulated by bureaucracy and materialism. Sadly, our present-day society objectifies and obsesses over material possessions, mindlessly working for the mega machine as Mumford warned. The grid structure and routine of megacities highlights this materialistic obsession, filtering those into the haves and have-nots. Closer real estate is to the metropolis defines the social pecking order. Suburbia sprawling out beyond the immediate city confines. In Melbourne, the river defines the metropolis zone further into the eastern affluent district and the poor industrial polluted west. In a city where everything is controlled, the planners are professional illusionists, controlling everything from print to radio. This control gave power to the governments, forcing social divisions. As society is manipulated, Mumford suggests it is the machine that is more humane, retaining the meaning of life, whereas humans have become automated and unresponsive. This manipulated, automated and unresponsiveness is paramount in today's society, as not only the routine is machine, yet we hold technology in our hands, bound to our wrists, and don't stop working for the machine all hours of the day, under the guise of efficiency. The internet with global access amplifies the machine's capabilities to divide and segregate civilization, and humanity blindlessly follows. Mumford promotes that every member needs to be active and contribute to the community for economic and social success. However, the efficiency of machines is leaving people jobless, increasing crime and delinquency. Hierarchy of the activities deemed by society denotes power, highest being the Prime Minister to the lowest the public toilet cleaner, and those unemployed being forgotten by society. This commitment to the machine overthrows all the safeguards to life, including the ancient law of self-preservation. We are losing the grip on self-preservation as computers take over jobs in every facet of the workplace. Humanity's role in society will not be needed, as robots, technology and machines far outweigh humanity's capabilities and intelligence. Humans won't be contributing to the community. For the mega machine to work, a balance is required, personally and collectively, as a community, which links back to Mumford's earlier works. Mumford suggests that there must be harmony between reality and pleasure principles, allowing man to succeed without exhaustion, a trait not readily prevalent in today's society. Constant pressure of unlimited technology means limited time to rest and rehabilitate, generating a tired and cranky population. In contrast to this image of exhaustion, Amana, Iowa, a Neolithic utopian community, crumpled as there was nothing heroic, saintly, or self-transcending, and the general generosity and prosperity saw a slackening of effort and eventual loss of production. This highlights the importance of balance and a necessity to work and be challenged. Perhaps utopia doesn't exist. In the 60s and 70s, he notes humanity's obsession with machine and how civilization has lost its purpose, with machine use taking over. He proposed the need to focus on humanity goals. Perhaps we took notice of this concept, as now society seems to be obsessed with selfies, and a me generation that now is so integrated with technology that doesn't care or interact with each other. Society has gone beyond Mumford's predictions, and perhaps this self-orientated goal era may be the demise Mumford warned of. A biotechnic society embraces technology and revolves around synthetic genes, chemicals, and genetically modified food. It happens to be an unnerving area of growth within our society. Uncertainty surrounds what the limits are. Cloning viruses for vaccines, okay. But cloning a human, no. Implanting impregnated eggs into a human who can't conceive naturally, okay. But genetically modifying impregnated eggs to be either male or female, or to ensure they miss a sickness gene, no. Reflecting on the history and the transition from grain cultivation to mechanical order, industries, exact mathematics to the Industrial Revolution to now the age of science and technology, the future should be predictable. Two clear paths: demise or sustainable life. Today, technology is allowing people to function in a more ecologically responsible manner. Idea pooling via the internet and allowing people to stay at home to work, easing congestion and slowing the metropolis growth. Make our cities human again, livable, sustainable, affordable, is what Lewis Mumford advocated for, and seemingly a vast majority of our population today wishes for this. Technology, science and mathematics can be the change that society needs in order to create utopian cities that are sustainable. In 1961, Lewis Mumford talks about a library system that allows for transmission of information beyond the urban centre and the infrastructure of hope that technology may bring. Well, we have achieved this. Students learn remotely via the internet. Space and time is irrelevant. Mumford highlights how cities float on the brink of danger because of congestion, causing sanitation issues, water contamination and lack of resources. Technology and the flexibility it brings, online learning, is helping to alleviate this. Mumford highlights the interconnectedness of technology advancements and a psychosocial transformation as we witness humans losing the ability to interact with each other in real life. Humans will no longer rely on social intercourse in the flesh, living virtually, connecting our brains to computers and our physical forms being obsolete. Mumford paints an eerie image of man in a spacesuit, insect-like, underneath a face, unable to make expressions, And you see this expressionless form on trains and trams, at bus stops, and as commuters are lost in their phones, connecting to someone in cyberspace yet losing touch with reality. This is a daunting element of the biotechnical society. A return to balance, social engagement and community is needed. Metropolis is deemed the centre of success, where civilians go to get money, to be influential and be famous. International and national associations and organisations have headquarters in New York, London or Paris, and it is the elite of the metropole that inspire and evoke trends with their power and wealth. Metropolis fell prey to gigantism, the universal competition with no limit, the biggest hospital, the biggest university, the biggest bank, resulting in big cities, big cars, big debt. This race to the extreme saw the huge vertical human filing case, the skyscraper take over and dominate the skyline. The last metaphor of skyscraper as a human filing case highlights Mumford's thoughts on the expanding metropolis. He detested architects for built air-conditioned boxes and loudly disapproved modern cities and the lack of culture. He blamed the International School of Architecture and also despised the automobile. Yet the car is an integral cog to Mumford's beliefs such as Garden City or small planned cities. The metropolis appeared to be booming, but the fastest rate of growth is in suburban areas. The city creates drama, the suburbs lack it. Urban sprawl is purposeless expansion. Agricultural land disappearing under asphalt, concrete, brick and stone. Factories of profit and power for capitalism and communism as suburbia spreads. Mumford warns this urban sprawl masks the needs and realities of the human situation and purpose. He likens the urban sprawl to a leaderless army that needs guidance or demise will undoubtedly occur. He acknowledges that regional cities may need to become a major part of the future, but these need to be carefully placed and break away from the machine metropolis and consider the goals and good of humankind. Mumford talks of the cancerous growth of the urban sprawl and the limitless defiance of the city and country. Standing in outer suburbs of Melbourne such as Doreen and Mernda, you see the cancerous growth spreading across the fields as diggers dig up the natural earth to lay another foundation for a soulless A.V. Jennings replica house. He suggests sub-centres that are based on distance that people can walk to alleviate congestion and boredom, whereby school and home are central. He contemplates a decentralised city, a technical organisation and sociological understanding to provide fuller opportunities for the inhabitants. Yet living in such a location, you feel the area is designed to evoke a set of preordained responses, a controlled feeling. The industry that denotes this suburban expansion promotes and requires consumerism. And you see this today in suburbs like Doreen and Mernda, where shopping is the activity to do on the weekends, and you must be seen driving the latest 4x4. The whole organisation of the suburban community is designed to kill spontaneity and is depressing within itself. The countryside used to represent an old way of life of simplicity and renewal, and was refuge and a beacon of hope, but due to the urban sprawl, this safety net of nature is gone. The pollution, machines, chemicals, fast pace is spread from the metropolis and continues at an alarming rate. Society today is pushing for sustainability. Schools teach it. The next generation is aware of the state of the environment, yet is it enough? To be so close to the brink of the demise of humanity forms insomnia. Worrying the rest of the population may not see it and continue to consume and thoughtlessly dispose of material goods. The city must lead the way, become sustainable, walkable and green. Humanity needs to lift up our heads, join hands and engage in a way to save the world.
Mumford proposed the idea that the city, all its structures and macro-organisation, was best placed as serving the people as a whole, above any other collective, and that this was linked to the very basis of democracy. In the text Authoritarian and Democratic Techniques from 1964, Mumford writes, "Can we agree, no matter how far we might diverge at a later point, that the spinal principle of democracy is to place what is common to all men above that which any organisation, institution or group may claim for itself?" This statement, and the surrounding arguments Mumford expounds, could be seen as linked to the egalitarian ideals of modernism which Mumford admired. The removing of embellishment to take away any notion of class and use of basic accessible raw materials. Just as equally, however, this could be viewed as integral to the standardised apartment blocks synonymous with Cold War Eastern Europe. But these statements of equality are ignorant of local culture or infrastructure planning, decidedly non-democratic, and removed from nature. The bulldozed and replaced modernist developments were the reason Mumford despised the plans of Le Corbusier. Mumford takes the ideal in the opposite direction. The principle was not to support measures that make us all the same, but to establish a right of deviation from a uniform space of living, such as the standardised apartment. From the same text, he argues for an even greater degree of self-direction, self-expression and self-realisation. In this light, the reader can judge Mumford to have postmodernist inclinations, supportive of all artistic tastes. Mumford goes on to play up to this notion. This means gladly sacrificing mere quantity in order to restore qualitative choice, shifting the seat of authority from the mechanical collective to the human personality and the autonomous group, favouring variety and ecological complexity instead of stressing undue uniformity and standardisation. In Australia today, these notions are not considered groundbreaking at a superficial level, but Mumford also requested the reader take on board the variety and complexity with a sense of overarching responsibility to a people-friendly city and the onward march of cities tailored not to people but to cars. Again from authoritarian democratic techniques. The glut of motor cars that is now destroying our cities can be coped with if we redesign our cities to make fuller use of a more efficient human agent, the walker. Mumford wasn't asking for the abolishment of the car. What he wanted was a deeper sense of change within the city, where it was a joy celebrating the multiplicity of artistic and cultural tastes, spread across it as part of the daily journey instead of being a grinding chore. Australian cities such as Melbourne that absorb most of the immigration into Australia and also interstate migration struggle to organise to keep people out of cars, and they are behind an infrastructure that would make the journey by car easier, moving in the opposite direction to what Mumford implored as group interests and individuals take preference over the whole. And this leads us to Mumford's criticism of feeding the machine. Lewis Mumford was particularly critical of success being measured crudely by only an increase in size, from What is a City, originally published in 1937. The unwillingness in the past to establish such limits has been mainly due to two facts: the assumption that all upward changes in magnitude were signs of progress and automatically good for business, and the belief that such limitations were essentially arbitrary and that they proposed to decrease economic opportunity. For Australia and many other countries, this concept is at the very core of how an economy is considered to be successful: the expansion of gross domestic product, or GDP, only fruitful if one period of measurement is larger than the last. For the size to increase, the entire collective group of people has to become larger through birth rates and immigration, or their productivity has to increase. So the same amount of people have to produce more. With new productivity increases rarely realised, Australia has taken to importing GDP. Ross Gittins, economics editor for the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age, writes in an article headlined "Immigration, the cheap and nasty way to grow the economy." Of course, the business lobby has no reason to care whether high immigration yields economy-wide benefits. All they're after is a bigger domestic market, allowing them to sell more widgets, make a higher profit, and justify a bigger salary package. Gittins surrounds this with arguments covering expensive overcrowding and low investment in infrastructure, and that cities like Melbourne have gone beyond their useful limits, as both interest groups privatise the benefits of importing GDP and push the social, environmental and financial costs onto the greater public. This is in 2018, many years after Lewis Mumford's original discourse. Mumford did not state an explicit size for a city and recognised that technology such as the telephone and car were changing how cities function socially, and that this would continue to modify the best fit population, but that the analysis was simple enough to determine when was enough. Interpreting and summarising the thoughts of Aristotle in The City and History from 1961. The lesson of controlled growth. If a boat is too small, it cannot perform the functions of a boat, that is, carry passengers or cargo. If too big, it cannot be handled or moved. So with the constitution of cities, if a town is too small, no matter what its architectural pretensions or its legal status, it is still a village. If it overpasses the bounds of growth, absorbing more people than it can properly house, feed, govern, or educate, then it is no longer a city, for its ensuing disorganisation keeps it from carrying on a city's functions. What is then required is both the funding to make the boat bigger and slowing the pace of bringing new people on board. The shape of our cities is being pressed by both directions, working the opposite to what they should be. The question of an alternative economic model to chasing ever-increasing financial results is still debated today and going unresolved. Fortunately, Lewis Mumford had solutions in mind for one of the symptoms, that is when the limits to a city's capacity were reached. Mumford proposed a polynucleated model. In What is a City, written in 1937, Mumford explored the notion that given a set of established technology, that there was a useful limit to the size of a city, beyond which increases in size were a liability to the function of that city, as per the boat metaphor. There is an optimum numerical size, beyond which each further increment of inhabitants creates difficulties out of all proportion to the benefits, he said. The answer to Lewis Mumford was quite simple, however. Boundaries that encourage the structure of the city to evolve as one city containing one centre to a city containing multiple centres, he comments. Limitations do not obviously limit the population itself, they merely give the planner and administrator the opportunity to multiply the number of centres in which the population is housed. Under this mode of planning, the planner proposes to replace the mononucleated city with a new type of polynucleated city. The term polynucleated is partly interchangeable with similar concepts such as the multinodal or multiple nuclei model. There are subtle differences, but they all essentially pertain to a city with a more complicated structure, and from Mumford's perspective, this model could be created to follow his ideal to serve the social interests of the individual as part of the entire society. This isn't by any means a historical problem. In this year, Rodney Maddock, Vice-Chancellor's Fellow at Victoria University and Adjunct Professor of Economics at Monash University, recently explored this issue respective to Melbourne. Melbourne has a serious problem. Most of its job growth is in the CBD, yet most of its population growth is at the far extremes of the city. Getting people to work is becoming harder. Many people take more than an hour to commute each way. They could better spend this time with their families or at work. Commuting time is wasted time. There are 3 ways we might tackle this. Change the planning rules to let more people live near the centre. Improve the freeways and railways so that people can commute more quickly. Promote job growth away from the CBD, and we certainly need to do all 3. As well as addressing the other solutions, Maddock goes on to discuss the Victorian Planning Authority's identification and planned development of nodes away from the City of Melbourne. Simplifying the issue, if it were feasible for those living on the very outskirts of the Greater Melbourne area to travel to a local destination to work, to access local education and local childcare facilities, it would make sense to do so, as this is where the issue of travel problems begin, and they deteriorate the closer one gets to the city centre. Melbourne continues to enlarge geographically, but many of the people living on the edges are travelling to the same destination as everyone else. By exploiting new centres around the perimeter of Greater Melbourne, these trends could be reversed and the city expanded in a way that better cultivates the individual's well-being.
Mumford's ideologies and theories are intriguing and inspiring, as he as a person was both of these qualities. His general care for humanity prevails in all his works, aiming to make our cities and civilizations better. Some of his concepts have come to fruition, and hopefully we can take heed of his warnings to ensure a bright, sustainable future for our children's generations. Thank you for watching.